right, we're back, and this guitar has been curing for about 14 days now, and I am now ready to start wet sanding. I just did a little test on here. I went and bought a nice pack of micro mesh sanding pads here. I've got the full kit, 1500 all the way to 12,000 grit. I'm going to be starting with 1500 grit just because I have such a thin layer of clear lacquer on this, and depends on what type of spray paint, what brands, what types you're using. It depends on that, on which grit you're going to start with. I normally wouldn't start with 1500 grit if I was using a thicker finish. Let's say like if you had like a poly or acrylic clear, any different types of finishes, you got to use discretion on that. Typically I would start out with like a 600 or 800 grit, but since I know that my finish is so thin on this, I'm going to be starting with a much finer grit than that and then working my way up. Okay, so I've just finished up doing this one side here with this 1500 grit paper, and as you can see, my water's drying up, and I have like a white residue left behind. That tells me that I have not burned through my clear coat, which is good. Just remember, when you're wet sanding, if for any reason you see the color of your color coat, that means you're burning through, you're cutting through, sanding through your clear coat into the color coat that you have underneath of it. So keep that in mind, and if you go too far through, you might have to end up putting on another coat of clear or another few coats of clear. So keep all that in mind. But I just figured I'd let you know about all that. I'll try to show it to you in here. So all these little shiny spots that you might see in this finish, and I'm hoping I can show this on that camera there from this angle I'm at. All the shiny spots are where the sandpaper hasn't touched. Those are the low spots. I have it pretty close to where I know if I use the next grit, it's going to cut through and touch that. And if it doesn't on the next one, it will on the one after that. So I'm not going to go completely through because I know how much of a clear coat layer I have on here. But that's where I'm at with 1500 grit on just the back. All right, so we finished up wet sanding, and right now I've got one of my minions over here polishing the guitar. We're using Scratch Out. This stuff works pretty well. I've used it on other builds, and I'm gonna let her put some elbow grease in. We're taking turns, right?
Yeah.
All right. Would you look at that? We have wet sanded and hand rubbed a polish onto it, and it looks gorgeous. Next, I'll start working on that neck. Okay, so I've gone over this whole neck with a 2400 grit micro mesh pad, and this pad right here, and I've also taken Formula 1 Scratch Out to it, and I think it's exactly the way I want it right now. Let me take my camera out of the holder and I'll show it to you close up. Alright, so I've got a really nice look to it, and you can see I've got a very vintage look. I ended up not putting more than one can of clear coat on this neck, so I went with a real thin skin on everything here. The body, the neck, each of them had right about one can of this clear gloss lacquer from Color Tone I bought through STEWMAC. And I think it looked great. I got a really good coat on it. I'm going to take care of the fretboard, and I've got the headstock looking exactly as the way I want it. The backside too. Please excuse the dirty workbench, but I really wanted to get this thing done. I've got all the soldering done now. Everything's been connected. I've got the neck installed. I'm about to start drilling holes for the pick guard and for the control plate, and then I should be fully assembled. Well, here it is, our final update. Got the guitar in a case here. There it is. It's been a while since my last update on here, but I've been working on it a little bit and playing with it, and I've also had some other stuff going on that needed my attention. I was in no rush. And here it is. I've done a little bit of relicking after the finishing on this guitar. I'm not completely done, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at so far. See if we can show you the finish checking. A little bit of light relicking on there. Please excuse the dogs. There we are. Alright. And that's it. I did do a little bit of artificial aging on my logo here. Not sure I like it, but it's going to stay for now. There it is.